started. There's quite a few people here now. So thanks very much, everybody who's joined us today. I'm Adam Gordon. I've been in recruitment for 22 years nearly, and I'm specifically interested in things like recruitment marketing, talent pipelining, marketing automation, that kind of thing. So occasionally I want to find out more about another area of recruitment I don't know so much about. So we do occasional interviews with people that are experts. Today we're talking about culture and its impact on organizations, right from the sort of talent attraction phase right through to the kind of employee life cycle. And I know that a lot of the people that have joined today are in recruitment roles, and we'll be particularly interested in its position with regards to attraction, but we will cover all of it because this is going to be very interesting. So Nico and I first met on a recruiting brain food about 4 or 5 months ago, and I didn't contribute an awful lot to that because the subject wasn't one I was hugely familiar with. But Nico, thank you very much for coming and taking part in this today. Just give us really a quick sort of introduction on what's sort of your professional experience and like, where are you from? Where are you today? All that kind of thing. Just give us a quick intro.
Super cool. Thank you for having me, Adam. And then, like you said, we met a few months back, but I think we hit it off because there's a lot of alignment on our vision about recruitment, culture, and so on. So very happy to be here with you today. So my name is Nicola. My full name is Nicola Alain Michel Julien Blier-Silvestri. I am French. It's a fucking long name. Oh yeah, and I drop bad words from time to time. I live in Copenhagen. So this is actually Copenhagen. We're in Copenhagen right now. We're in the office, the Platypus office. We are legally allowed to go to the office in Denmark at the moment, but we are still in a kind of a soft lockdown. I am 40. I'll be 41 in a few months, married, 2 kids, and I've been working in recruitment and HR for 15 years, give or take. I come from a pure recruitment background. I was a headhunter in the finance industry. Started in Ireland, actually in Dublin. Then continued in France, and then I went to the dark side of the fort, which is internal recruitment, because like a lot of headhunters, I was building a lot of frustration from like, yeah, you're making good money, but you never see the results of your work. And working in-house, I really liked seeing what I built. So switched to in-house, worked at Yahoo, worked at Informatica. And when I moved to Denmark 8 years ago, because a lot of the big companies, I was pure enterprise, but the big companies, they wanted me to speak Danish. And I'm ashamed to say that even after 8 years, I still don't speak Danish because, as I said, I'm French and speaking English is already a miracle in itself. So I just dived into the startup scene. And 8 years ago, I joined a very small company at the time, 30 people, called Trustpilot, that went on to become an absolute monster. So within 2.5 years, I was the first HR recruiter, a bit of everything, like the kind of octopus T-shaped employee you get early days in a startup. I took the company from 30 to 350 people, opened the New York office. They sent me 89 days on vacation, not to pay for a visa, it was the way to do less than 90 days. After this, I went to Falcon Social, another Danish startup. Then I joined Unity Technology. We recently did an IPO. I was the head of recruitment for 2.5 years over there, hired like 500 plus engineers in Europe in a span of 2 years. Then I moved to Revolut. I was chief people officer at Revolut for a little time because if we talk about culture, let's just say it was not a good alignment with my culture and values. And then we joined Peakon, where I would still be today if I didn't have the idea for Platypus 2 years ago. And I started Platypus. We're going to be 2 years old on the 27th of Feb. And Platypus is, at the start, was a recruitment tool. That's the idea that we had, but very quickly evolved into a cultural data-centric tool to tackle or to bring data in every aspect of the employee lifecycle.
What was your job at Peakon?
I was the head of recruitment, director of recruitment.
Yes, and because Peakon's have they just been acquired or they've just
just been bought by Workday, which is a very, very smart purchase by Workday.
Yes.
Glint was bought by LinkedIn. Workday bought Peakon. You still have Culture Amp that's fighting, but basically those three are gone in my opinion, they're going to consolidate. You still have some smaller players in smaller countries, Supermood in France. There's few players in Scandinavia as well. But for enterprise, now you basically have 3 big players, and Culture Amp is now being put in a position where they either have to IPO pretty fast to get some money in and fight against the 2 other ones, or basically being eaten alive by somebody else.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. There's a lot of dynamism in the recruitment technology area right now. Vast amounts of money. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, huge amounts of money going into it. Yeah. It's
Personio doing the whole, like, we're becoming a unicorn, and within 2 weeks, Pecan being bought for $700 million. HR tech, recruitment tech, talent tech is extremely attractive at the moment. And that's a good thing. I mean, you and I are not going to complain about this, right?
Well, you're not, yeah. So, okay, let's come on to the main subject, what people want to talk about. So culture. Culture to me, has got positive and negative connotations depending on the way that it's deployed. And, it's been a slightly controversial subject over the last few years because it was really lauded as something that was vital up until a couple of years ago when people started talking about the negative impact around diversity and all that sort of thing. At the beginning, so what attracted you to culture as a subject?
At the beginning, the pure beginning, Platypus, what we wanted to solve is what you just described. We wanted to solve cultural match into hiring, because anyone that has worked in recruitment have experienced the lovely feeling of finding a great candidate, bringing it to the hiring manager. The hiring manager comes out of the interview and saying, hey, great, perfect skills, exactly what we're looking for. It's not a cultural fit. And you're like, okay. Based on what? Based on your assumption of what the culture is, based on your gut feeling, based on the fact that you don't see yourself having a beer with that person later on, based on what? Because the reality of it is today, what companies define as their culture is their corporate values. That's what they define as their culture, and they all have very similar stuff: be bold, integrity, respect, stuff like this, which in all fairness, and me, I'm a little bit cheeky. If you have to put integrity on your corporate value, there's probably a big problem in your organization in the first place, because that should be a baseline. It shouldn't be a corporate value, right? Yeah. So having worked, like I said, 15 years, having been lucky enough to build organizations from the get-go and seeing super growth, I know culture is important and critical to the success of an organization, but the reality of it is, what is culture? That's the big thing, and that's what you've been asked, like you just explained, right? Companies love to talk about our culture, our culture, our culture. Usually they put a fancy picture of a ping pong table and a Friday bar with it because, hey, our culture is that we're having so much fun and everything. And the reality that this is not culture, this is employer branding, but it's not culture. And corporate values are not culture as well.
Okay, so let's talk about, why specifically are values not culture?
Good, very, very good point. Very good question. Corporate values are extremely important. They're critical. As long as they're followed by, in terms of the behavior of usually top management. Corporate values are defined by top management. Corporate values are autocratic, decided by the top, usually in let's say some beautiful exercise with some consultant or the C-level sit downs, maybe do a little bit of qualitative interviews with our people, employees and everything. We come back with some 3-4 beautiful words that we're going to put everywhere on the website and everything. Extremely important. You've heard me say this before. My best definition of what corporate culture is if you look at France as a country, liberté, égalité, fraternité, they're beautiful corporate values. They're amazing corporate values, right? Would that be the words you would use to describe French culture? Probably not. Right? And because French culture is what we live on a day-to-day basis. So French culture is probably more something around we love to complain, we love to shout, we're very noisy. And even actually, if you deep dive on this, like I wrote on LinkedIn the other day, French culture is very broad, and you will have subculture in Paris, in Marseille, in Bordeaux, and in Lyon, right? So corporate values, extremely important into who we are, who do we want to be as an organization, what do we stand for as a whole, as a group. Culture is something that's completely different because it is the people. Corporate culture, corporate values are autocratic. Culture is democratic.
I like your France analogy, and I having been to France many, many times, I really understand what you mean, because there is a subculture in the different parts of the country for sure. And so I wonder if liberté, égalité, fraternité is more of an aspirational vision almost.
Exactly. it is what, I mean, it comes from the French Revolution, and it is what the country aspired to be as an organization. Just like when a company puts integrity, respect, agility, that's what that's our North Star. We aspire to be this.
I mean, that's the term I was about to use. Are the values really the North Star for culture rather than the definition of the culture?
It's the compass of, this is important to us. This is what we want to have as a baseline in our organization. But again, any organizations, and I like the analogy with France, obviously, you will have subculture in every location, every department, every team has their own cultural dynamics that are sometimes aligned with the corporate values and sometimes not aligned with the corporate values. Is culture actually important? And if so, why is it that important? Because if you've got a sales team and a tech team that are entirely different from each other, and there is no thread of cultural, they're just not the same, then why is it important? It's the cohesion and belonging, right? I believe that at our core, humans, we like to belong. We like to be part of a team. We like to feel that I am part of something, whether being nationalism, whether being like a rugby team, whether being a religion, we like to belong, right? Similarly, culture is exactly this. And an organization is trying to have this feeling of like, hey, we're all together. That's the idea of swag. Let's all wear the same stuff, right? So that we feel that we are part of one. We're stronger in a group than we are alone, right? It's in a way, you could push it as kind of like a control mechanism in terms of management, of like, you're with us and you're better with us than without us, right? Now, is that powerful when it works? Yes, extremely powerful. When you feel that you're belonging into something that you're aligned with, when you feel that, hey, this mission, those drivers, this is 100% me. I mean, when people are talking about motivation, engagement, alignment, you know yourself that somebody that's aligned and feeling at one with the culture of an organization, they're going to perform better, they're going to onboard faster, they're going to stay longer in the organization because you feel that you're part of this.
Okay, so that's what I was about to ask you. How do the things that you've been talking about are, I agree with all of that, absolutely. The things you've been talking about, how do we get the finance director to become interested in this? Because
what's the bottom line? Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Yeah. What's the ROI?
One very, very simple data set in terms of, and that's very much like a link to recruitment, right? 47% of people that join a new job are gone within 18 months. That's the global data set, right?
Wow.
89% of those people mention culture. They mention culture was not fun. It was not a good.
89%.
89. So I'll send you the link afterwards. Wow. I can share the link. Yeah. And the reality. So you could say the culture was not a match. I assume a big part of this is the manager. We all know we usually join organization. We leave managers. You resign because of the manager. And again, the whole logic of your manager, the direct. The person that you're reporting into directly has a massive impact on what your experience of the culture of the organization is going to be, obviously, right? So that's one set of hitting the bottom line of the organization, because we've all done recruitment. We hate to have to redo a recruitment because we've hired somebody that is leaving the company within the next 3 months. That's a fail hire. That's extremely expensive. Sometimes they say it's 6 times the cost of the salary, right? Up to 6 times, because it's the time you didn't have the person and so on, all the interviews. I mean, it's a nightmare. So that will be the number one. Number two, it's been proven in terms of, and here I'm looking more at like my time at Pecan, but Culture Amp has the same data, Glint has the same data, that engagement, the more engaged the workforce, the better performance of the organization. The more happy the workforce, the better, longer performance you're going to see from the team, right? So you need to invest in this, but in order to invest in this, you need to understand what is my culture.
And we can link culture to increased performance using specific examples and case studies and data, and we have that information.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's loads of online. You can look, like there's loads of data set, lots of white papers that are relating the engagement, happiness of your workforce. You could say that's very much linked to the culture of the organization with the performance of said team.
Okay, we're keeping this top level for now. I'm going to go into specifics about different points of the kind of recruitment experience and the employee experience shortly. But I've got another question about like examples Can you give some examples of organizations where culture has really been? We've all heard the quotation, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." I'm not entirely sure I agree with that, but I think both of them are. I think they're both important and they're different things. But yeah, could you give us some examples of where companies have really thrived, and also if you've got any examples of companies where they've really performed badly because of a good or a bad culture?
So there's two personal experience of companies I've worked at, but you need to take into account those are obviously full of bias because it was my personal experience, with my personal values and so on.
Yeah.
One example I have of a great culture in terms of the way people were engaged and aligned with the mission is Unity Technology. Unity Technology's mission, a corporate value, was democratization of the game industry, being like giving everyone the tool to be able to build video games, and that was lived true. And the way people were engaged and aligned with the mission, the way people were treated in the organization around the impact they could have, it was clear and honest. And I think that's the key, right? With my second example, is that as long as you're clear and honest about what your culture is, what about your mission is, and you're again following up with this, there's no problem. My second example, and it's again a personal experience because I have some good friends that are still working there and enjoying working there, is...
I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah,
it's Revolut.
Yeah, I mean, it was not ideal for me. So I joined Revolut as Chief People Officer. And during the interview process with Nicola, we had great exchange. I mean, on a personal level, I have a good relationship with Nicola. We used to play Civilization, the video game, together on the side and everything. I mean, he's a good guy, but his vision about company culture, engagement, and mine are completely different. And the culture of Revolut is very similar to Uber. It's all KPI-driven, action-driven, result-driven, pushing people to, be on top of each other for the sake of the results of the organization. Now, I do not go well with this type of culture and mission because I believe that we work better when we're together. I don't need to walk on people's face to be able to reach my objectives. And where Revolut at some point failed in terms of this was that what they advertised or what they were communicating about their culture internally was absolutely not the reality of the culture internally. So you would join on the false impression of, hey, this is what I'm going to experience. You come in, you're like, okay, fuck this. This is not for me. You drop. So the reality, in my opinion, is that there's no good or bad culture. There's bad behavior that are linked to some things that you can accept or not accept in an organization. But the reality of it is more, there is good or bad organizations for you in terms of culture.
Yeah, I actually, that crossed my mind as soon as I said, could you give some examples of good or bad culture? Because actually that's totally subjective. So yeah, we've all got examples of places we've worked that have not been quite right for them. PwC, I spent 3 years there. Undoubtedly, that is a brilliant place to work for a lot of people. It was not right for me. Definitely not right for me. I had 50 bosses, and that wasn't quite right. That sort of matrix structure didn't quite work. It would only have worked for me if I was one of the bosses, and it was going to take me too long to become one.
It's not about understanding what are the cultural drivers within an organization. And I would actually push this idea to not with the whole organization, because it's not what you're going to experience. As a person, you're going to experience the subculture that you have in the team that you're working with, right? And then understanding what are your cultural drivers and see if there's some alignment or misalignment with this. Am I going to enjoy working here? Is it something that's aligned with what I like to do and how I like to work?
Yeah. I actually look at our guests here. I know at least one person who is probably thinking of an employer that she's worked at, which where culture changed over time actually because
culture
of
changes, all the time.
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned Uber because another two examples of the same type of really fast-growing companies that are very, very different. Would be Uber and versus Airbnb.
Yeah.
Airbnb, considered to have a really great culture, and you can see what they did when they laid off a lot of people last year, and they were the first big example of a company to effectively turn it into a database and say, look, these are amazing people. Come and hire these amazing people, and they really seem to live their values. And whereas, Uber's gone through quite a lot of change, and there others have as well. Amazon also is another company with a very, very distinctive culture and way of doing things.
And if you drop those three names where we would question for us if it's a good culture or not, Amazon, Uber, and Revolut, it's not like they're not successful, those organizations. They are, but you need to push the idea on like at what cost. Now, I don't know so much about Amazon, but Uber and Revolut, we know that their churn is absolutely insane. And I'm going back to what you just said about, okay, how do we involve the CFO in thinking that the culture is important? Let's look at the churn. If we could pull out the data, let's look at the churn of those two organizations on the last 2 years. What's the average life cycle of people in an organization? If it's less than 18 months, we know that basically you're losing money on the person. You are. Because the onboarding and the training and everything, you are. So, but those two, the Uber and Revolut, they don't really care about losing money, because they were in a phase about like, it's all about land grabbing. It's all about fast growth. So I'm literally going to burn 2 employees, and that's completely fine because that's my goal. And I don't really care about my culture. I don't know so much about Amazon, but like what you said about Airbnb or Netflix, apparently is very well known as well for a good culture internally. They have a completely different business model. And that's probably linked to the culture they want to have internally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Amazon is very KPI driven, and you have to write a 6-page report if you want to make any big changes or do things, and it's very
not for everyone.
I know people who work there, and they say it doesn't actually come, it doesn't feel like a micromanagement sort of environment, but certainly from the processes that you read about, it sounds like that's what it might be like. Sorry for anybody who works at Amazon, or happy for you for those people that work at Amazon, and it's bang on right for you. Absolutely.
Exactly. It's about finding the right spot.
So let's start to link this to the different parts of recruitment and engagement. When I am looking to attract people in to come and join a talent pipeline or to apply for jobs, what are the sort of best ways that I might go about amplifying or communicating what my company culture is all about?
I can tell you what you shouldn't do to start with.
Okay.
The way I look at employer branding today, my perception is that for most organizations it's literally how do I align to as many people as possible so that they apply to my jobs at scale. Because recruitment has become, it's all about the pipeline. How big is my pipeline so that I have a high probability of closing a role faster? I mean, it's literally like this today. And in order to do this, I need to fill up the top of the funnel as fast as possible with as many candidates as possible. So I will do bullshit branding and do your typical videos of like, hey, how cool it is to work here and everything. You and I know those videos. You can take the name of the company, remove and put the name of another company because there's nothing personalized. It's literally branding. It's not personalization of what is actually, you usually have what? A ping pong table, a football table. Some people being like, oh yeah, God, it's amazing. My career is growing and everything. I mean, it's pure bullshit. It really is. And it's certainly not what you're going to experience when you join this organization, right? So I would not do that. Number one, that's really what I would avoid because I think people are fed up of this. I really feel that, especially now with the pandemic, COVID and everything, everyone has had multiple hours to do some self-reflection about what do we actually care for? Where do I actually want to work, right? I believe right now, people are not trying super actively to change job, but I hope that in September, things are a little better in the world. And I think in September, there's going to be shitloads of people that will want to change job because they've had 12 months of rethinking and overly thinking, am I aligned with the company I'm working with at the moment? Did they take good care of me? I think this pandemic has pushed people to think, seriously, I'm spending 8 hours per day in an organization. I better be aligned and happy about what I'm doing. So number one, I would step away the whole generalization, fake bullshit branding, typical adverts that you see, and really go about personalization. What are you going to experience if you work here? And I'm not saying here as the whole company. Again, that's not what the person is going to experience. I'm almost pushing for a change of employee branding. It should be personalized per location, per department. If you're hiring for a tech department in Berlin, tell me what it is in that specific department, because that's what I'm going to experience, not the whole company. I don't care about this. That's not what I'm going to leave. What I'm going to leave is this.
So you don't agree with the concept of putting pictures of models onto a career site and then...
I mean, I put pictures of me on our mobile site, but it's obviously not working because we don't have that many applicants. But
you look too much like a model, obviously. It looks a little bit fake and people don't think it's real. Yes, okay, yeah. So, I mean, I absolutely agree. And I think one of the most important aspects of employer branding is it really does it needs to not look like marketing, because quite honestly, I'm just going to say it, the younger somebody is, the more immune they are to any type of advertising and marketing, and they see straight through that.
You're right.
So I really think it's important that an employer brand directly reflects the culture of the organization.
100%.
But it might be different in Berlin compared to Amsterdam, compared to
London.
It will be,
and it's fine. And you don't need the same person to work in Berlin, Amsterdam, or London. That's the whole idea of it, right? I mean, culture is not static, it changes, and it's not the same in every location, and you don't need the same people for it. However, you might want to create cultural diversity and try to bring change, and that's a different question altogether, right? But what you're saying, I so agree with this. People are fed up of bullshit. They want genuine, they want authentic. They don't sell to me. Tell me the story, tell me the reality of what I'm going to live. You don't need, You're not doing employer EVP, like employee value proposition. You're not selling to me by telling me there's a ping pong table, or there's a Friday bar, or that, hey, I'm getting 2,000 euros more per year than in this position. That's not why I'm going to take that job. I'm going to take that job because it's aligned with what is important to me at the moment X of my career.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And for nearly 10 years now, I've been encouraging employers to put their people right into the very middle of every employer branding and talent attraction initiative, especially hiring managers and people who are doing the job that you're trying to attract other people to come and do. Mm-hmm. If I'm interested in working at Platypus, yes, I want to hear Nico talking about the Platypus and the vision and all that kind of thing. But I probably also want to hear from the software engineer who I'd be working right next to find out what they think it's like to work at the company.
Of course. I can only present to you the reality, or my reality, of what it is to work at Platypus. And it is my reality as the founder of Platypus. It's full of bias. I believe it's the best company in the world. I believe, and it's my personal bias of it. But if you want the reality of what it is to work at Platypus, we probably should ask Alex just here, who's been with us with 18 months. And of course, he's in front of the camera right now, so he's not going to lie.
Do you want to just get Alex over and we'll find out about it? No, I'm only kidding.
No, I'm kidding.
I'm only kidding.
But for actually, you know what? Inside, Alex used to work at Revolut with me.
Okay. Yes. Well, that's a very good sign.
And he's
I suppose it's a sign. It's a sign that some people like working with you, and they will come with you.
Exactly. Or I pay them well. Either or both. I don't know.
Or you offer. Oh no, it's not that according to Alex. Okay.
No.
Right. So, listen, Kay's asked a couple of questions. So, Nico spoke about values being autocratic, whereas culture is democratic. How should leaders address the disconnect, and especially when the values at the top are disconnected with what's happening in the field in reality?
Right. So, what happens, and again, I keep on going back to a concrete example that we can see on a day-to-day life. What happens when you have a concrete disconnect between top management and the ground troops is the yellow vest in France. This is literally what happens. It's a revolution at the stage of a country. What happens in the state of an organization? People will leave. And at the moment, they're not leaving because pandemic. But I told you, September is going to be an absolute nightmare for a lot of organizations. A lot. How do you address this? Well, I mean, before addressing it, you need to be aware of where are those disconnects. That's the big problem. Again, and I'm not here to do a sales pitch. And Adam and I have talked about this many times. But without data, you're just another person with an opinion. That's the reality of it. You could feel that disconnect, and for you, it might be very, very, very real. But if you cannot show it to me that there's a disconnect, you're the only one perceiving this. Now, perception is reality, but for you, not for the rest of the organization. So if you go to top management saying, hey, there's a disconnect and everything, they'll tell you, is there data? No, let's do qualitative interviews. Let's do one-on-one with everyone. There's not that many people in one-on-one with their managers when their job is on the line that are going to be genuinely honest and saying, hey, you know what? Your corporate values, they're great. You're not living them. And the culture is bullshit. People are genuinely not doing this because, well, unless they have a job on the side lined up and they're ready to live, but because it's dangerous.
Okay, so let's talk about we've talked a bit about employer branding and talent attraction and what you should not do in that area. Let's talk about the sort of interview process. How do we, linked to what you just said, how do we train our hiring managers, or do we not train our hiring managers in terms of how to communicate culture and values and things like that? Well, how do we make sure that, I'm going to use one of your French words, how do we make sure they don't fuck it up?
Yeah. Unfortunately, by experience, they very often fuck it up. I think hiring managers, again, I have this one sentence that people have heard me say 50,000 times. But so many times I heard from a hiring manager saying like, I know how to do recruitment. I've hired my whole career. And you're like, yeah, I mean, I know how to cook pasta, but I'm not a Michelin chef restaurant. It's really not the same thing we're talking about. Okay. The problem again is the self-awareness. The problem, I think we should train hiring managers. I think we should again give data to hiring managers about what should you talk about, how do you talk about this. But again, with pushing the ideas of like, we're not selling here. Your job is not to sell. Your job is to tell the reality of what people experience on a day-to-day basis in your team. What drives your teams in terms of culture? Is it a team that's very, very driven by learning, self-development? Is it a team that's very driven by compensation? I mean, maybe it's a sell team and it's all about hitting targets and making the money, right? But say it as it is. Don't bullshit. Yeah. And ask people about what is important to them. Open questions. Drive the questions from a fake corporate value your perspective when you're like, oh, we have integrity as one of our core values. Give me an example of you worked on integrity. I mean, this is God. Welcome back to 1980, right? Now it should be more about tell me what drives you as a person. Yeah, like genuinely.
Yeah, I think one of the important aspects to this is where an employer sits within the supply and demand kind of scenario. So, for example, a company like Amazon is probably a company that a lot of people would be interested in working for because they're taking the world by storm. At the same time, there would be maybe an organization which is doing something like, I don't know, it's in coal mining or something like that, where people think, well, that's not really the future. I'm not particularly interested in working there. So, every organization, some organizations are the most desirable to work for a lot of people, and others are the absolute least desirable to work for. So the way that you need to create culture and communicate that right from the employer brand stage through to the interview stage is going to be different. And I remember when I talked about PwC earlier, but when I worked at PwC, I do remember working I was in the human resource services practice. So I was a consultant providing advice to other organizations around their HR communications. And I was putting together a proposal for a big organization to do a large project with them over about 6 months. And so I was talking to one of the partners about, what are the reasons why they should choose us over everybody else? And immediately that person went, because we've got the best people. We hire the best people. And I'm thinking, wow, you joined this organization as a graduate trainee 20 years ago, and you really do think, because you were told you're the best, you really do think everybody here is the best. And it's like no self-awareness at all. I mean,
it's brainwashing. Their culture is about self-brainwashing. I mean, if you keep on repeating something long enough, it becomes true. It's extremely sad.
But it's the way that a lot of employers actually do approach it, and they think, well, I'm head of product management at this company, and I'm the best, and we only hire the best, and so
it's 100% the way they look at it. Like, we don't need to do employer branding. People are killing to work here. You're like, really? Though, are they? And yeah.
The only company that almost gets away with that is McKinsey.
But like you said,
they don't do anything about, they do any kind of employer branding or recruitment marketing. It just flows through everything that they do, and they deliberately keep that velvet curtain in front of them. So they're
creating fear of missing out. They're creating it's like if you're that good at what you do and you have this great reputation, exactly, it's hard for you to get in. This is like a club. Yeah. That's it. So, yeah.
now I'm employed at this organization. What are the kind of ways to what are the best culture things to do and the worst culture things to do? Knowing that it's going to be different in every organization. What are some of the ways that I can keep people motivated, engaged, and working for me for 3 years rather than for 18 months?
Again, so if we go back to my concept of corporate values being autocratic and then culture being democratic, what often leaders do, unfortunately, is assuming that if something is good for me, it's good for everyone. Yeah. If it's what I want, everyone wants this. A lot of companies love to say we take everyone for a weekend in the Balearic or in Spain or something like this. I don't want to go in Spain with you. I love working with you. In the weekend, I have my wife and my kids, and I love to spend time with my wife and my kid. Why is that something that's nice for me? Just because you're the boss and you need to get away from your family and you want to party for the weekend, that doesn't make it something that's attractive to me, right? That to me is the biggest misconception. We're going to give something that we think is fucking awesome for our people. Yeah. But it's probably not. So first thing first is ask questions. Be open around you can't actually work on your culture, again, if you don't understand what is your culture and what drives your people. And that's going to be different from an organization to an organization, from a location, from a team, and so on. Once you understand this, then you can actually work on focus. Okay, you know what? I have an example of a client using Platypus. I'm not going to name them, but typical startup. They were hey, let's work on culture. Let's do more Friday bars. As standard, very Copenhagen thing. Let's do more Friday bars. People will party together. It's great. They're going to drink and forget that they're not happy, and everyone is going to be awesome on Monday morning. Typical, standard. But actually, if you can bring the right data, you'll be able to tell people that's not what they're looking for. They're very, very keen on learning. What we need to invest on is training programs, telling them, hey, you know what, these skills that you want, we can be there in 6 months and so on. Now that you talk to what is actually driving them, you're creating a good culture of answering the need of what is driving your people. Yeah. You need to understand. You really need to understand. And the big challenge with understanding is very often, if you sit across somebody that's reporting into you, are they going to be 100% genuine when they have a chat with you? We hope. Yeah. But very often not.
I think this is really vital. It's really vital to remember that everybody's different. And if you look at, when I first started my career, I spent 3 years in a recruitment agency, and, Friday bar, 90% of the organization was going, yeah, that's good for me. Absolutely. Let's start at 4:00. And by 8:00, we're doing karaoke together and stuff like that. That's absolutely fine. But for the 10%, it might only be 10%, but for the 10% of people who were parents
or don't drink
or didn't drink or didn't want to get, and couldn't take part in that, actually, you're creating an exclusive culture whereby some people are missing out.
Exactly. So that's not culture anymore. It's not culture. It's discrimination. It's eugenicism of what I believe as a leader I want the company to be. And as a leader, you have a massive impact on the culture of the organization because you manage people, you take strategic decisions about maybe the Friday bar or investing in some other part of the organization. You're the key, right? You make it work. But you need to realize that you are one of the key. Everyone else around you has an impact on the culture of the organization. You have a bigger impact. You have more responsibilities, obviously. And the whole line around with great power comes responsibility and everything. But you need to understand that you drive it, but you don't decide it.
Yeah. Okay. Nico, we've got 2 minutes. So what is the one thing? Yeah, we've got 2 minutes. What is the one thing that we have not covered that what's the one secret you've got that you think we should share that we haven't talked about?
For me, genuinely, I think we've talked about it, but more emphasis. It's really about being authentic. I think it's about being genuine and honest about what is important to me as a person, because that's going to impact how I bring this culture of the organization, and very much understanding that not everyone is going to be aligned or agreeing with what is important to me. As long as I'm genuine and honest, and people mirror each other. If I genuinely and honestly explain why things are important to me, I will encourage people to do the same with me. And I create then, like you say, inclusivity. Inclusivity is not this fancy and everything. It's not about it's really about allowing every single person to have a voice. That's what it is. That doesn't mean you're going to say yes to everything, but they should be able to voice their opinion. Once you have this, then you can start building on your culture because you have more data to understand what drives my people.
Yeah. This has been absolutely excellent. I've written down at least 20 different things, and 10 of those I'm gonna put 10 of those into like bullet points of why the people that were unable to make this live should tune in and listen to this in their own time later. Last thing, sales pitch. What is Platypus? What does it do? How does it work?
Platypus is basically the tool that allows every single employee in an organization to anonymously express what is important to them. We gather all this data with an algorithm, and we give companies actual cultural data about their company that they're going to be able to use for talent management, talent attraction, and talent retention.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. I think I'd like to make use of that. The only thing is I might be a bit scared about the results, and like
every company we onboard, when they have the cultural map, they're like, okay, wow, we didn't know that. And that's the beauty of it, because you can't know.
Yeah. Well, let's face it. If I ask somebody in my team, you didn't seem as if you're very happy today. What's wrong? They're probably going to go, oh no, it's all right, I'm fine.
Yeah, the weather.
But I actually want to know the answer.
Yeah.
They're not going to necessarily tell me. So.
They can't. Sometimes they can't, and it's not because it's you, Adam. But sometimes they just can't. People, not everyone feels they can be open, and it's completely okay as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Nico, thanks so much for joining me today. That's been really excellent. How can people make contact with you? You're easy to find.
On LinkedIn, yeah, Blier-Silvestri. I think I'm the only one, so it should be easy. Yeah.
Don't look you up by all of your names. One really last question.
It's just Nico.
One really last question. Say what's your full name again?
Nicola, Alain, Michel, Julien, Blier-Silvestri.
Right. In the UK, that would probably make you some sort of you'd probably be related to royalty.
Yeah, but it's not. It's really not the case. For some reason, my parents, they gave me my three other names. It's my two grandfather and my godfather. Right. And it actually doesn't fit on my passport. That's awesome.
Good. All right. Thanks so much for joining me. Everybody who's come and joined us live, all the very best, and see you again. Cheers.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.